Hey everybody, nice to having you today. I'm Alexandru, I'm the president of Data Science Society, and today we're having Ria, which is our podcast lead. Ahmed is our director of data at Sky Showtime, and Dom, our senior data engineer, same company, Sky Showtime. Welcome, and we are really happy to have you today. How are you doing?
Hey, good, thank you. Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Great. Ria, if you don't mind starting with the first question.
Yes. Hi, Dom. Hi, Ahmed. So our first question is to just understand if you could give us a background about yourselves, your general experience, and finally coming to your role at Sky Showtime. Maybe what is it that you do, and just a general introduction and your career trajectory. Maybe Dom, if we could start with you.
Sure. Thanks, Ria. So, as Alexandru said, I'm a senior data engineer at Sky Showtime. I have been with Sky Showtime for just under a year, which actually isn't unusual for Sky Showtime, as we are a very young company. I'm sure we can cover a bit of background on who we are shortly as well. I have been working as a developer and engineer for the past 4 years. I've previously worked at Sky, where I've worked on the ingestion pipeline that brings in all the data from across the company and outputs it to various different departments, one of which is indeed Sky Showtime. So I was quite lucky to get a bit of an insight on the end-to-end process and how data is collected and then now used in other places. But before then, I've actually had a more of an unusual route into the world of technology and software. So I studied law in university and qualified as a chartered legal executive, where I've practiced for a number of years in civil law, in particular commercial property. So yeah, it's a bit of an interesting entry into technology, but I, at one point, have decided that law wasn't for me after all, and learned how to code, and was lucky enough to secure an opportunity within Sky, which was a program for career changes, in particular women who wanted to enter the world of technology, and that's helped me to transition from law to tech.
That's really nice to hear. Was it specifically something that you loved about data, or was it has it allowed you to maybe introduce some skills that you learned during your law years?
It probably wasn't data specifically. There are a lot of transferable skills in problem solving and being able to learn sort of complex concepts and apply it to various scenarios. After all, law is extracting the facts and figuring out the solution or what the applicable laws or cases are, and not too dissimilar when it comes to coding. You work out what the problem is. That's usually half of the solution. Once you've got the problem, it's relatively easy. It's easier to then figure out how best to apply the technology or the coding language that you know.
That sounds incredible. Emma, go next.
I'm not sure mine's quite as exciting as Dom's, but I've spent most of my career in data and analytics. I actually started my career working in Pizza Express, and then finally got an opportunity to work in the school looking after the IT, and then I was working as an IT support officer in an engineering company, and they had an opening to look after their databases, which then grew into BI, which then grew into working across the stack, really, from backend databases and infrastructure all the way to creating analytics and data science projects and everything kind of in between. I've been fortunate enough to work at a variety of different kind of companies, everything from banks to Lego to Shell, and I previously worked with Dom actually as well within Sky in the same department. So moving to Sky Showtime was a bit of a natural progression, really. And some of those roles have also kind of spanned, architecture, as well. So I focus a little bit more on maybe stakeholder alignment, a little bit of delivery, strategic direction. I think my development skills are not quite as sharp as they used to be, unfortunately.
Still plenty of experiences, and I know with time you lose the feeling of coding, but I'm sure that if you take a month or two, you'll be back at business and you'll be brilliant as well. And if you don't mind, because we've started talking about Sky Showtime now, maybe could you introduce us to what it is and what's its mission, maybe?
Dom, I don't know whether you want to kick off and I can try and fill in any gaps.
Yeah, sure. I was hoping you'd answer that one. So Sky Showtime, as I mentioned earlier, we're a relatively young company. We are a joint venture between Sky and Paramount to launch a streaming service across mainland Europe. So we've launched between last September and this February. We've launched across 22 different territories, from sort of the Nordics all down to Eastern Europe, and so on. So we are across various territories. We offer a wide variety of content, both from sort of Sky and Paramount. So a lot of the big titles that you would see here in the UK are probably on our platform at Sky Showtime. But as well as that, we offer more localized content. So which brings me on to possibly one of our challenges is that we've got localized content. We've got a number of different languages. So it's quite important that we have the right subtitles and dubbing especially on the English speaking content, although we share content, localized content across territories anyway. So yeah, that's where we are in terms of Sky Showtime. I'll pass to Ahmed to fill in the rest of the gaps.
No, I think that's brilliant. Yeah, I don't think there's anything more I could add, really. I think you've covered it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dom and Ahmed. So just to understand, in the context of Sky Showtime, could you help us understand how does data engineering play a role in defining the business strategy for a platform like Sky Showtime?
I can make a stab and then Dom can maybe fill in. I think that, the function that we work in is an enabling function. And if we have a look at how far the data that we provide spreads, it can go through, different departments such as finance, HR, marketing, and different sub parts of marketing, as well as the strategy department. So I think that inherently all of the decisions are either backed up or made or used through data. It doesn't always come necessarily through the data engineering pipelines. We're not so centralized that we're the only department, but I think that everything that flows through an IT machine is effectively data, right? So arguably all of the transmissions and everything that we do, we're transmitting data to consumers at the same time, and we're receiving data back about that as well. So very broad answer, but I think that it's quite well embedded within the company. Maybe not necessarily as pronounced, but it's there. Dom, I don't know whether you want to build.
So one of the aspects that we provide data on and assist with reporting is our user numbers. So within Sky Showtime, we across different partnerships, our apps are available both via Apple and Google stores, and as well we're available on web and number of different smart devices as well. So our user data would come through from various partners as well as directly through the web. So we facilitate collecting all that data and putting that together in a more sort of unified aggregated format that we then make available to our analytics team, who create dashboards with users coming across different platforms, the business can then use those dashboards to make decisions on which partnerships have been successful, which aren't performing as well, and drive further insights from there.
That's amazing to hear, and the cool thing is that you actually somehow introduced the topic that I wanted to move on to, because you mentioned that you're building dashboards for helping the company take decisions. So my question would be, how is all this data used to better take business decisions? Because we've seen more and more that data is at the core of some decisions, because of course, guts and personal experience has to come into a play and has to it has an important role. But with all this data that we're gathering, it will be a pity to ignore it and not understand it fully in order to take a better decision.
I can try and start one, and then I mean, if you look at from a product perspective, I think our product team are always keen to understand the performance of certain elements that they kind of put on the platform. So if there's a particular button, they may be interested in the journey to that button, or how many people click through from one element to the next, and also just kind of general navigation in terms of is the UI kind of laid out in a way that's easy for the consumer to find content. So I think that there's always kind of various elements that are being evaluated from an internal and external kind of data perspective as well. So data to back up user preference behavior as well. So it's not just always data driven as well. There's kind of subjectivity added to and context added to the data as well. So I think it in that scenario, it could be used to kind of drive a certain piece. We recently found out, or we as we kind of work with the product teams, that a question may lead to another question, that may lead to another question. And then vice versa as well. A perspective from a consumer may need to be validated at the same time. So that's kind of one area that's kind of heavily used. So in terms of data usage.
Yeah, I guess the other point, just to pick up on you were saying about the pricing models. One behavior that our marketing team is reviewing or monitoring is how our offers perform. So when we launched, we had a number of offers that were available to users in various territories, and so marketing were able to track over time how the users who took up these offers are performing. So, for example, in places where we had a free trial for X number of days, the marketing team were able to then draw insights to see whether users churned, or when they churned, I mean left the platform after the offers expired, or whether they continued being a customer, and if they continued, we may then start asking further questions. As Ahmed said, it would be what kind of content they watch, what are they interacting with, and whether there are any patterns. So yeah, answer one question, start asking a lot more new questions.
And was there any time when you started by a question and you ended up to a totally different thing? Like, was it something that really surprised you or challenged technically in any ways with all this product development and adjusting the product and so on?
I think there's various elements that we kind of look at. There's one that kind of springs to mind in terms of what avatars are popular and how they're used, because as you start delving into it, different platforms have different perspectives to an end user. So a web user may see something slightly different, and one of our analysts did some analysis recently and came up and actually started with a very basic question, but actually further exploration, potentially through just interest in the area itself, drove further questions. So sometimes the business question that you get can actually lead the person that's doing the investigation to kind of propose things that weren't necessarily asked in the first place as well. So on the flip side, there is elements of data that just are used for operational users, right? So finance, for example, would want a kind of straight data pipeline, or customer service may be interested to check, can we just verify that X happened or Y happened as well. So we kind of cover a broad spectrum from operational and kind of ad hoc use cases all the way to supporting analytics ones at the same time.
Right. So you mentioned data engineering pipelines. If you could help us understand what they are, and to just cover in terms of understanding what is the technology leverage, if you could tell us how are they built, how are they maintained, what is the technology behind it?
Sure, of course. So on the Sky Showtime side, we are heavily reliant on, or heavy users of GCP. So majority of our applications live on GCP. So anything that I talk about should be in that context, really. So it's just to clarify. Now, in terms of the data engineering pipelines,
Sorry, I'll just mention GCP is Google Cloud Platform, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I
thank you.
should have clarified as
No,
well.
it's all right. It's fine, don't worry. It's because you've been using it for so long, you already know the abbreviation, but I just wanted to, if there are some people that don't know, to make it more clear. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks. Yeah, so in terms of when we talk about data engineering pipelines, it's really a broad term that describes the movement of data across the platform in one shape or form. So for Sky Showtime, that looks well, it's made up of a couple of different ways. So our platform is provided by Sky, and that's where the main ingestion of the data happens. The team that Ahmed and I worked in previously. So those that main ingestion is the applications, custom written applications that ingest data from both the Sky Showtime platform and various other sources, including the partners that we work with that may host our platform, and they then process that data by putting it in a more of a normalized format, so that everything is uniform. They may then apply some additional transformations, such as hashing and encrypting any personally identifying data, so that when it gets all the way through to us, we can't just look at what our friends are doing and on the platform in terms of viewership. We take data privacy very seriously, and so within that platform, once the data has been sort of processed, transformed, it is then we then use Dataflow, which creates sort of more unified views in BigQuery, which form the basis of the Sky Showtime data. Now, on the Sky Showtime side, we use a medallion architecture when it comes to our database design. So our bronze layer tends to be the views that the Sky outputs for us, and these are split into various different views, including user data, video data, sort of product data, and a lot of stuff in between. So I won't cover those all. We then have a silver layer. Again, that's in GCP, Google Cloud Platform, utilizing BigQuery. The silver layer tends to have additional transformations and sort of joins to really make the generic data more company friendly, so something that we need specifically for Sky Showtime, and where our business cases lie. And then finally, we've got the gold layer, which is our aggregated data that is used for dashboards. So the gold data will be sourced from the gold layer is sourced from the silver layer is sourced from the bronze layer. So we've got a nice flow of data in that direction. For the most part, we use batch processing, meaning our data is refreshed once a day, and we utilize Airflow to orchestrate that processing. We do also have some streaming pipelines which connect to some of our marketing tools as well, which that's more of a direct connection between the output of data from the Sky systems straight into the marketing tools. But that's roughly how our data architecture looks.
And just out of curiosity, because I was always wondering while I was watching something on a streaming platform, is there are like do you use for let's give you an example, maybe it's easier to ask this. So let's say I'm starting a series, I don't know, a random series that I want to watch, and I'm starting with the first season, first episodes, because I've never watched it before. And let's say I'm watching 3 episodes on one go, and I'm just stopping at the fourth in the middle. Is there like is this data captured in any way? Is there any way to gain some insights in understanding why I've stopped there, or why I've been watching for that period of time, or I don't know, some measurable things that then can be transformed in a call to action, something.
Yes, I mean, I think it's when you're using a product that's hosted by a third party, I think it's safe to assume that any interaction you have with that product is recorded in some shape or form. In terms of the insights that we drive, we look at it from a analytical perspective, and to see a general actually saying, okay, so you've started watching this series, although it actually won't be on a personal level, it'd be at a kind of a user group level. We look at, so you've watched the series, you watched up to episode 3, and then we maybe look at some trends to see, well, is everyone else stopping on episode 3? What's wrong with episode 3? Is this just not particularly good, or I don't know. We ask these questions essentially. So that's some of the question we ask, but we may also look at more from a maybe a debugging or problem solving. Is okay, so you've stopped at episode 3. It looks like everyone stopped at episode 3. Do we have is our app crashing? So we can look at it in different ways. I mean, we may never see why you've chose to stop at that particular episode, but there's definitely patterns, trends is what's really useful, as well as debugging if we have some reported issues. Don't know if Ahmed's got anything more to add.
Oh, I think you covered it.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Dom. So Dom, you mentioned the medallion structure. You mentioned the GCP products that are leveraged in the setup and for the pipelines. And we also understand that the setup is relatively new. It's a year into the process. So could you share some of the challenges, or just understanding what are the unique things that probably took place while the setup was taking place? Maybe something unexpected. Or something that maybe you've applied from your previous role. So just trying to understand what are the different challenges faced while doing the setup, or maybe the challenges that you face currently, because of course, putting a structure to everything requires time. And I think it's incredible to achieve what you already have with respect to the team outline. So if you could just give us some more context. And then coming to my second question, just understanding day-to-day your role in this team as well.
Sure. So in terms of the challenge around the setup, maybe start with saying about a positive, in that being a joint venture between 2 very well established companies and having a platform provided for us by Sky, that's actually shortens the number of time we would have normally spent spinning up a brand new platform. So that's been a huge help. But on the flip side, we went from went from a brand new company to a launch in less than 6 months. So there was a big expectation on us to deliver and set up the platform and provide that data to the company, especially in the earlier days, which Ahmed can speak to a little bit more, since he's been in with the company longer than I. So that's one of the challenges, is actually trying to get that platform working really quickly. I guess another one is we have had that help from Sky, but also we face unique challenges with having with content in different languages across different territories, and so it's figuring out how to adapt the ready-made platform to our needs, so that we get the best out of it. And now that we have launched and are through that rash period, we've hit a new challenge, and that's how figuring out what our day-to-day would look like, or business as usual looks for us. So going away from that mad rush to making some of the trade-off decisions where we value time over perhaps a more resilient solution, to now unpicking some of these decisions and making good choices for the future. That's probably the biggest challenge at the moment. I don't know if Ahmed wants to add any more challenges.
I'm just trying to think. I mean, it's always difficult to understand the data as well when you first start somewhere. It takes a little bit of time to understand the structure, the format, which is also quite an exciting time, right? To kind of play and learn at the same time. But as Dom has said, we're kind of launching and growing the team at the same time. So some of the other elements that come along with that is we're still embedded processes, and we're still learning as we're going. So what we're kind of launching may not be what we need now, and teams grow and shrink, and then those processes of knowledge sharing across members. I mean, we're a startup, so we have kind of startup problems at the same time, startup opportunities. Those kind of go hand in hand. It's fantastic though. I think that not just challenges, we get to do quite a broad spectrum of the the technical area and the business facing element as well. So I think that it's been good, and it's fast paced, but I think that's what we enjoy doing, and we work with smart people as well, so I think that we're challenged in the right way, and the big one, data quality, is always at the forefront. I'm trying to make sure that data is delivered upstream, and making sure that the consumers are happy, and then the producers are also doing their bits to ensure the data is in the right format, and actually bridging that gap between the two, and making sure that we're constantly evaluating, because it's not always easy just to check, spend time on building data quality frameworks and also building pipelines and supporting pipelines at the same time. So I think Dom and the team do a great job balancing all those elements at one time.
Just following up on this, because you mentioned that you're kind of a startup, right? So how is it to work with two companies that have been in the business of production, not delivering the content on the online platforms, but being there, doing that for so long, having their own biases maybe, or their own experiences, their own decision that they've taken throughout the time. Like how is it affecting all the interactions between you as a startup, with them as companies, and as you as an employee, actually?
Oh, big question. I think probably worth mentioning that although we are a joint venture, we do have autonomy as a company, and that really comes through across various departments. So we quite fortunate in that we do make those a lot of the technical decisions are up to us, especially when it comes to delivering products for our internal teams. I mean, yes, there have been, or there is sometimes maybe a little bit of frustration, maybe that's the right word, and maybe impatience in that there is certain stuff, because we are relying on these upstream systems that aren't provided by us. There are things we kind of wish we could do ourselves, just because they'll be exactly the way we want them. But then we also need to think the bigger picture, and how we can utilize these tools, and just trust in the other teams that we can work together and deliver the right solutions in combination. Sometimes we have to juggle having sort of people across various departments and companies in one meeting to deliver an end-to-end solution. But as long as we've got someone sort of overseeing the end-to-end and keep tracking these interactions, I think it's been working fine so far. But yeah, definitely in terms of sort of speed of delivery sometimes, and just been from a developer perspective, it's there's so many different ways of doing the same thing, and everyone feels strongly about their own way, me included. So sometimes it's like, I could just write this and it'll be done, but we've got to think bigger picture.
So just talking upon the point of decision making, within the space of data, we see that there are so many tools. So for example, there is GCP, so there's SQL versus Python, and then you have, say, Looker Studio versus Tableau. So as a team, how are those decisions made in terms of which technology to be leveraged? Of course, cost plays a large factor, but if you could throw some light on, how are the different technologies used and actually leveraged, decided upon to be used?
I can maybe talk more generally, and then I think I found in a lot of organizations, sometimes you start a company and those decisions have already been made and commercial deals are already in place. I think, for example, at Shell, they've got large commercial deals in place with technology vendors, and if you're working within a specific team, you don't necessarily get to influence those decisions in that context as well. But I think that in the context of Sky Showtime, we've inherited some of the kind of tooling technologies, but we're always, I think, open to look at the best way to do the right thing, and it's not just necessarily cost efficient, because it could be process driven. Actually, that drives down time, which generally impacts costs as well. But it's a fine balance, right? It's not always just finding the kind of hype tool on the market, because there may not be a commercially viable company to work with. So I think that there's always two folds, and I mean, Dom, I think, can probably give a better example of decisions that have been made to look at specific tools. But I think it's a wide subset of aspects that kind of form into it.
Yeah, sure. Just thinking of some of the most recent decisions, we've had to think about various different aspects, with us being, again, I keep saying that, being a startup, but also being a relatively small team. When we look at different tools, so for example, we've recently looked at using Firebase for some of our additional systems, and using Firestore as a supplementary database for that system. When we were designing that particular piece of work, the aspects that we considered is the team familiarity with the technology, the vendor, so obviously Firebase and Firestore being Google products that were already available for us, which meant that they were enabled on our platform and we could do the testing with ease. So timing wise, that also helped. And also the suitability to deliver that objective. So our key objectives at that time were for an external application to be able to connect to it and provide a secure system to do that. So again, we looked at how that secure connection could be established. Is there a tool that already provides us with that kind of connection, or do we need to write something that's custom made for ourselves? How does that work in terms of time and team knowledge, and other further implications that would involve additional teams? So if we're writing something custom made, perhaps cybersecurity needs to be involved. Will that delay the project? Do we need to get Sky involved? Perhaps there is a different way of implementing the whole system. Perhaps we could use part of their platforms. So it's figuring out what the top objectives are. So for us, it was timeliness, the team knowledge, whether we could use sort of languages, technologies we know across the platform. So these metrics, how they score against those metrics, and I'm not going to lie, a small part of it as well is as engineers, we do want to use the fancy new tools. So if there is scope to go for something a bit more exciting than the sort of old tools that people complain about, there will always be a tiny little preference towards those.
I think both of you touched really good good points with technology, because sometimes there are some particular reasons why you go with a tool or why you take a decision regarding what technology to use. But in the end, if it's a new company, it comes down to also what does the team know, like what are their preference, what are the familiarities, as you mentioned, because nowadays there are so many companies offering kind of the same tool with just bits and tweaks that are different and might be better for your company, might not. But it's important to understand how much time you also need to involve into bring that tool into your company, because in the end, even though it's the best or is the newest, it might be too costly or too time consuming to bring it to a certain point. And if you don't mind, because in term two, we kind of have a project. So at Data Science Society, we do research projects every term and during the summer. And in term two, I proposed and kind of supervised the project, which was on movie recommendation systems. So because it's part of our new content consumption, we are recommended a lot of content. We are recommended what movies to watch and so on. Maybe could you briefly explain how you are doing that at SkyShow, or if you've developed this tool, or if you've taken something that was out there already? I would really love to better understand your perspective on this.
I mean, I'm not sure how much detail we can discuss, but I think that recommendation systems are an interesting one. I think that they're generally used as competitive advantage for companies. Getting the right content so you can keep you engaged or make you look at things that you weren't used at before. I think there's historically there was a large prize associated by a large streaming company that kind of stemmed a lot of the Kaggle kind of competitions and so forth as well. So it'd be interesting maybe to know from your perspective what you've learned, so maybe we can take some things away as well.
I think they were, because you mentioned Kaggle, that's where we got the data set from, which had a really nice script on how to pre-process the data, and then some hints. The team didn't go that further and didn't come up with a new way of recommending these movies. But generally, what was advised and what was taken into consideration was either what that user watched before, or like as you said, we didn't have we had the leverage to not care about privacy because the data was already anonymized. But I know that as a company you do have to take care of that and make maybe groups and put things together in order not to be able to pinpoint a particular user. But for us, it wasn't that case. So we were looking at what a user watched before. And it was really important also the ratings and the number of like the popularity of those movies and similar ones. So it had to do with genres. If a user had maybe watched 10 movies that are science fiction, and they are the most, maybe 5 out of those 10 were the most popular ones, you could either recommend the next 5 most popular movies that they haven't watched, or maybe if a particular movie that maybe they've rated as well had some particularities in terms of it's not only a science fiction movie, but it's having some drama or some romance into it. Maybe you could try to also give something for them to try. I know it's more popular with TikTok and Shorts and Reels because user is consuming a lot of content, so it's easier to throw in something new and see how they react. But I think it can be done to a degree in the area of recommending a series or movie to be watched, because it's you need to commit more time to actually understand if you prefer it or not. But yeah, there were some of the key aspects that we've looked into. Unfortunately, the team didn't finish the project, but we would be happy to maybe find some new eager people that would look further into this and I don't know, come back to with you and have a discussion about it.
No, I think it's interesting from my perspective as well. I think that, you know, some of the things that you mentioned, actually having a data set that was kind of ready made.
Yeah.
I think if you look at organizations, you know, especially some of the larger ones, trying to get that data set together in a format that's usable can be a challenge. And it's not just necessarily the technical aspects, it can be the organizational boundaries and ownership and even discovery, right? Where is that data? Who has access to it? Should you be allowed to have access to it? And even down to very simple things, such as you talked about genre. What is the actual classification of a title, and who makes that decision? And, you know, how does that impact the model in the end in terms of, you know, what features are used and what features aren't? So I think it's a complex problem, and then to get to that point is not an easy one as well. I think there's the old adage of you know, what is it, 80% of the work of a data scientist is cleaning data. That sense, it may well be true.
I may suggest an extension or continuation of your project, and it's to think about it from the data engineering perspective. And when your model is quite happy with your model, is figuring out how you then ran it in production, or make sure that it's run reliably. So how do you make sure that your outputs recommendations consistently in a timely manner, that the recommendation, if you go straight on the platform, that is available to the user instantly, that it loads instantly the content they should be seeing. Also, how do you monitor the actual recommendations, whether there's any drift in the recommendations over time? What happens when your model stops running? What's the backup plan? Who's going to find out about it? Who can fix that? How do you alert those issues? Or worth looking at and form part of the data engineering sphere as well.
Indeed. Good points. Yeah, we'll try to come up with maybe a more holistic project, because with these research projects, they don't have that much time. It's usually run throughout the term, so roughly three months. And we do tend to focus on the data science perspective, either maybe processing the data or having the data processed already and coming up with a model to do some machine learning or some stuff like that. But indeed, whenever you're going into the real world, there are even more challenges that you have to address and you have to take into consideration. It's not you might find the best algorithm that's giving you the best answer, but if it's taking it 2 minutes to recommend something, it's useless in the end. So I do agree there are lots of things that need to be considered before taking a decision into such things.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Tom and Ahmed, and thank you for that question, Alexandru. I think there are a lot of takeaways for students. In the interest of time, Ahmed, if you could, you're currently pursuing the executive MBA at the University of Warwick. So could you tell us what that journey has been like for you? Juggling a full-time job with an MBA, your takeaways, and is there anything differently that you do now in your role post your MBA? Could you give us?
It's been an interesting journey. I think I started during lockdown, during COVID, so everything was remote, and then kind of moved to online. I think my aspiration for doing it was not necessarily for career movement, but learning and learning a wide variety of things. And it's certainly given me that. I've met a lot of really talented people. I've learned from not just tutoring sessions, but also the people in the classes. I mean, I think in my day-to-day job, I wouldn't necessarily have got to touch aspects like accounting or entrepreneurship or strategy. So I think it's given me a really broad spectrum, and actually it's been quite vocational as well in terms of applicable to the real world. So, you know, a lot of the assignments are driven by, you know, past experiences. So I can't lie, it has been tough trying to balance 2 kids, a busy job, and an MBA at the same time. I've maybe taken a slightly unconventional route in terms of doing it slightly longer than most. I found trying to write an assignment, do pre-reading and doing group work all within 1 week quite difficult. I think by the time I finished work, my brain was ready to explode. So I've I paused a little bit between modules and kind of stretched it out a little bit further. I am close though now. I've got a dissertation to do, so I'm very excited about finishing. Although I will miss the journey that I've been on, but it will be nice to have a few months not thinking about assignments in the evening. But yeah.
Maybe could you maybe share your experience as well? Because I know you're doing a master's here at Warwick, and you've told me before that you're considering an MBA, so maybe having your perspective would be nice too.
Yes, absolutely. So I had actually applied for the full-time MBA at the University of Warwick during lockdown as well. For personal reasons, I couldn't pursue it that year, and my admission wasn't deferred. And then it was a tough call for me to take between an MBA and an analytics MSc. But it's been a great experience for me, of course, the past 1 year, having to work with diverse individuals, different people. And of course, the learnings have been great technically for me, which is my primary aspiration for pursuing an MSc. And at the same time, I got to do a dissertation, an external dissertation with Sky Showtime. So I felt it was a very wholesome experience for me because I got to practice hands-on some of the tools and techniques that I'd learned during my master's. And I worked closely with Dom. So personally, it was I had a number of great takeaways from the MSc experience as well. And I think doing an external dissertation was just a perfect ending to my course. So I would definitely maybe recommend an MSc or an MBA at the University of Warwick because you get a lot of hands-on experience in terms of what is being used in the industry, and then you also have opportunities to pursue within industries and the different sectors. So I would say it's been a wonderful experience.
Lovely to hear. And so we don't leave you out of this discussion, though. Could you, because I think it's the realities of nowadays. People are doing a degree for different reasons. Maybe their parents were pushing for them, or maybe they thought that that's their passion or the coolest thing at that time. But I've seen, and it's been easier than ever, I would say, from my perspective at least, to change to not fully commit to what you've been starting. As your example, you started liking technology and using or developing some coding, or it doesn't really matter. But could you maybe give us some or to the audience some piece of advice on how this transition could be made, or how to cope with it? Because I know most likely there will be a lot of challenges for trying something new. So yeah, maybe if you could walk us through that, and that would be great.
Sure. So I guess first piece of advice, or just a bit of knowledge, is it's not an easy journey. There's definitely a lot to learn, especially to begin with. A lot of angry evenings where my code just wouldn't run and I could not understand why, and ready to throw my laptop out the window. But it's all part of the fun, because then made it work the next day, and then that's like the best feeling ever. I just kind of want to go dance on the street. So as the on the flip side, so yeah, it's a bit of an up and down journey, and I'm sure a lot of developers will tell you the same, that the lows are low and the highs are high. So yeah, if that applies to people, if they like working that way, certainly go with it. And I guess the other part as well, especially for people that are more established in the industry, is if you do switch technology, it's actually accepting that you are back to a junior position, and people aren't as established, and take it all as a learning opportunity. Often people that are younger than you will tell you how to do stuff, and yeah, there's always loads to learn. So just embrace it, and don't let that what seems like a career step back get you down where it's only temporary.
Just a branch that you're taking.
Yeah.
If you may allow me this GitHub joke. Yeah. So maybe we could finish with this. I would really love to sit to get to things from all three of you. One, if if you go back in time, or if you had the chance, would there be anything that you'd change, or and not like that, but also having this experience now, would you do something differently moving on compared to how you've been doing things? And then I'll add the other question in the end.
A tough question. I wasn't expecting to be stumped by that one. I think Dom will probably be testament to this. I moan a lot, but I actually really enjoy my job. I enjoy the challenges that come with technology and fast-moving technology, and the opportunity to learn again and again. Like, I once a year take a few days away to practice my development in a particular programming language just for a bit of fun. So I think if I could go back, I would probably maybe spend another couple of years doing some more of the foundations as well, so that we're so deep-rooted and embedded. Because I think that it's easy to try and move around and do different things, but end up being a specialist in a particular area. And I always be curious. I think like don't stop. Like, if you're interested, go and find out. I think that's the thing. A lot of people that I work with and still work with now still look at things in the evening. So I think it's an industry of pure passion. I don't think it's something that you can do long term if you just treat it as a job. Like, you've got to enjoy doing it. And I think a lot of the best people that I've worked with are the ones that are passionate. Doesn't mean that they're the best developers, but the best can be best to work with, the ones that are easy to work with or get stuff done quickly. So yeah, a multitude of things there, but be passionate about what it is we want to do and be curious.
I mean, for starters, I'm going to have to find out more about those annual side projects, Ahmed. See if we can make those Sky Showtime applicable. Get you coding on the ground.
I'm afraid that you're going to look at my code and laugh at it. So yeah, I'm not giving you I'm not giving you access to my GitHub personal repo. No chance.
All right then. But in terms of whether I'll do anything differently, honestly, I'd probably just take my own advice from earlier on and just not stress out about it as much. There are definitely days, especially in my early days of working for Sky, where, I mean, I've worked in a very supportive environment, so the pressures weren't really there. I've had really great colleagues and mentors at work, but I probably put a little bit too much pressure on myself in learning things as quickly as possible, or just beat myself up a little bit over not being able to understand some things straight away. So yeah, I'll probably just tell myself to chill out a bit more.
All right. Yeah.
I completely agree with what Ahmed and Dom said. I think being curious is very important, because I think if you're part of a specific role or industry, you tend to not explore the other tools that are out there, or what the other, say, product-based teams are doing and everything. So I think just staying curious and staying interested and just keeping up to date, trying to keep up to date with what is going on in your industry and other industries and within that space of, say, data and analytics. So I think that is a big takeaway. And of course, networking, I think, is also very important. That has been a great takeaway. I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of individuals from different teams and, different mindsets. And it's been a great learning experience. So maybe all of that.
And the final thing, now, whenever you create something, it's okay, dash final, and then you add dash final again. Because I think it's not a buzzword yet, or maybe it's been a buzzword, but we've seen people still talking about this, still trying to implement this technology and moving further with it. And I'm talking about generative AI. Maybe could you give me your perspective from the industry of entertainment? How would you see it, or how are you planning to take advantages of all this craziness going on around with generative AI, and especially visual tools, because they've been more. I know everybody's using ChatGPT, which it's language based and it's a transformer, not really a generative AI, but still, like there are some cool stuff out there like Midjourney and others that allow you to create prompts, or to take prompt and create a moving thing like an object, or and other things. Like, there are tons of tools that are being created. So yeah, what are your plans with this?
I I think that as an industry, more recent, maybe 2023, there's the recent writer's strike. I don't know whether you've heard about it, in terms of actors walking out and writers failing. So I think that as an industry, generative AI is potentially impacting and causing a stir. So I think that it's definitely one to watch. I'm interested to see the barriers to entry for organizations as well, not just media companies as well. So if you look at a lot of the organizations, it's very subjective by the way, but if you look at a lot of the organizations that are leading the way with generative tools like ChatGPT, they're the larger organizations. How do you make those available to smaller companies and make their data available in those models at the same time? So I think that will be an interesting concept as well, to kind of democratize to a certain extent and market generative AI to all companies of all sizes, or is it always going to be applicable? Because I don't think the rollout of that has started yet. We've seen the stir of it and actually the hype around it. So I mean, it's definitely going to play a part. And one of the things I learned on my recent kind of Warwick module was that someone came in, and talked a little bit about having worked in the finance sector, and actually they went and spent a lot of time outside, weekends kind of learning about what AI did, because it wasn't necessarily about being afraid about their roles being taken in the future, but trying to accommodate how AI might impact their job in the future. And so I think that there's a lot of fear of the Isaac Asimov kind of robots taking over, but I think that we're still maybe some way off that just yet, but I might be wrong. So I don't know. The Skynet generation isn't quite here, I don't think. So
I guess from the engineering perspective, the developers particularly like to embrace all those tools, anything that makes our jobs easier. So possibly less on the image based, but more sort of code information based. So ChatGPT, Bard, and Copilot, all these tools. We try and use what we can to make our jobs that little bit easier.
All right, great. I know we're a bit over time, so thanks a lot for joining us, and I hope it was a great conversation, not from only my perspective, and you've enjoyed that as well. And because I know we've been busy, we've already postponed, and it took some time to get this done. So we really appreciate your time and your commitment to helping us develop this podcast and getting all the insights to the people and what matters to them. Thanks greatly. It was a lovely experience, lovely afternoon for me, and I hope to meet you sometime soon in person.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting us to come and talk. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. For me personally, this is an episode that I've been excited about for a very long time. So thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us. I think our students will have a number of takeaways from this particular episode, and specifically within this industry as well. So thank you so much. It was great having you.